What's up guys, Manny here, welcome back to the channel. It's finally time to continue the conditioning series in which I like to discuss how you can get the most out of your current fitness when it comes to climbing, for sending a limit project or planning a super hard on-site or whatever else you have in mind. First, a few words about the background footage of this episode. We've got some pretty nice outdoor days in recently with some good, but unfortunately not so successful project attempts. And a few of these were recorded on camera. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna show you here during this little voiceover. Now, we're already in the last of the 4 chapters, body weight, mental sharpness, restedness, and special substance C's, baby please. And after discussing the effects of alcohol and caffeine on climbing performance, I'd like to share my opinion also on the third big one, which is tetrahydrocannabinol, also known as THC, the psychoactive compound of the cannabis plant. Ooh. As always with these, I'll say a few words on what the substance does in the body on a chemical level, and then I'll try to derive some conclusions from that, from the perspective of climbing performance. So let's get started. Similarly to caffeine, it is assumed that THC is actually a defensive agent of the plant against some grazers, although this is somewhat questionable because the concentration of THC differs greatly not only amongst various parts of the plants but also amongst genders. And in the human organism, THC acts as an agonist of the so-called endocannabinoid system, which was actually only discovered when the mechanism of action of THC in the human body was studied. This system consists of probably a bunch of receptors, out of which only 2 are more deeply investigated so far though. They are called CB1 and CB2, and they're activators, which are produced by the human body itself, which is the reason why it is called the endocannabinoid system. The distribution of the receptor molecules throughout the body allows some educated guesses what its function might be. CB1 occurs mainly on cells of the central nervous system, on motor neurons, short-term memory stuff and other cognitive abilities, and also on areas associated with rewarding, so there might be a connection with motoric learning and stuff like that, for example. While CB2 occurs on immune cells, which suggests regulatory function of the immune system. Now the thing is that THC targets the receptors of the endocannabinoid system, how many there might be in terms of quality and kind, far less specifically and far less efficiently than the body's own agonists, which seems to be the cause of the altered state of mind you get from consumption. But before we get into what such a state can look like, here's another thing that I found quite interesting. THC and its metabolites are very fat soluble, which means that after repeated consumption, these compounds will to some extent accumulate in your fat tissue, from where they are released only slowly, which is why repeated consumption is detectable by drug tests even after weeks of abstinence. This reminds me of a very old video actually that I made, in which I recommended drinking lots of water to people who would like to lose some fat tissue. The body likes to store various toxins in its fat tissue because it's metabolically quite inactive, and it's much easier than getting rid of that stuff by processing it in major organs like the liver and so on. However, as soon as you burn that fat off, these toxins are getting released into your system, and you might even experience symptoms of intoxication again. And drinking lots of water will of course help flushing all that waste out of your body. So let's move on to the big question: can the state of mind which is induced by THC consumption be beneficial for climbing performance? Well, let's examine what such a state looks like. Most people who have adapted to the substance to some extent will describe the reduced pain, reduced stress, a general calmness, reduced fear, and so on. Heavy consumption causes lethargy, decreased motor coordination, and slurred speech and stuff like that. From simply observing people who consumed it, I would generally describe it as a slowing down effect, kind of relaxing, calming them down. And in a climbing context, this sounds not very practical on the first sight, because we actually want to be as sharp and precise and aware in our movements on the wall as possible, and fast at the same time, by the way, right? Well, let's say you're the kind of climber who's super nervous, shaky, stuffed to the gills with fear of falling and fear of failure. Well, in this case, THC might help you to chill down a bit and eventually increase your performance by doing so. And it's a bit like the antagonist of caffeine, which we talked about in a previous video. Also, the reduced sensations of pain might help a bit. So it really depends on what kind of climber you are. The caffeine guy who needs to speed himself up a bit, or the THC guy maybe who wants to calm down. However, before I get myself into trouble here, I'd like to make clear that I don't recommend using any drugs, but good old, solid, pure reality, which is crazy enough, especially if you live hard and make the most out of it, in my opinion. Although there are claims that repeated consumption doesn't have any adverse side effects, I've seen a couple of people who consumed regularly for long periods of time, and man, I can tell you they change, and not for the better in my opinion. They have worse memory and seem to be kind of slowed down all the time. Their speech is not as good as it was, and others have anxiety problems. If you have open eyes and know some of these people as well, then you will know what I mean. I think the recent movement towards legalization is not happening because the drug is totally harmless and super awesome, but as with almost everything that happens on a large scale in this world, because some people smell big business by doing so. So do not step into the trap, in my opinion. Save a lot of money, stay clean, stay sharp, stay focused, and get shit done. Apart from that, THC is also on the list of prohibited substances, which already led to disqualifications of climbing athletes in the past. So the thing, as I've already mentioned, is that it's fat soluble, which means that it will stay in your system for a long time, making it detectable for a very long time. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you've got something from it. As always, drop some likes and opinions and your own experiences down below. I would highly appreciate it. And until then, stay strong, stay clean, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.